Hey, everybody, this is Jeff Morton, your host. Let's talk about it. I've been gone for a couple of weeks because I've gone through hell for a couple of weeks. Really, literally, it's been a very difficult couple of weeks. Lost my good friend, just issues, okay? Sometimes it takes Jeff a moment or two to recompose. And and I had a couple of guests that weren't able to make it, so I just decided to chill for a little bit. Now, today we're going to be talking to a friend of mine. His name is Lynn. We're going to be doing AI stuff. So he's going to be teaching me today because I don't know a whole lot about it. I met TJ at a networking thing that we attend. It's called Ignite You 365, where a lot of business people get together and just network. It's been good. It's been a good thing to do that because I've met a lot of business owners and people that are doing things to help other people, which is true for TJ as well. And he'll talk about that. I do want to say something to you folks that do listen to the podcast. I need a little bit of financial help. I'm going to just put it out there. I've got an upcoming trip to Israel. I don't know if it's going to happen, but my finances are just not there to meet that trip. So if you guys can help cover some of the costs of the show and all the different things that I do online, that would be very, very helpful. You can just reach out to me. Carol's going to put my email address up eventually throughout the show. It's jsmorton@protonmail.com. We're facing the Bidenomics too here in the Jeff Morton household. But today's show is going to be something a little different. I don't know about AI. AI to me is the Terminator. It's a computer controlled situation that causes mankind to be killed. Well, obviously, I don't believe all that stuff. But I did do a little bit with the Copilot, which is what Microsoft offers. I started asking questions earlier this week, and it actually told the truth about some things. I'm not going to get into all of that today, but it did tell the truth. So it kind of piqued my interest to learn a little bit more. So today's program with TJ Lynn is going to be useful to me. So without further ado, let me introduce my guest today, TJ Lynn. Hey, TJ, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Jeff. Glad to be
man.
here.
I'm glad you decided to come on and have this conversation. We planned this one several weeks ago. We sat down for lunch, I think it was. We got to talking about a lot of things. Listen, I'm glad you're here, but nobody knows you except me. So give the audience a little bit of information about who you are, where you come from. Tell us about yourself.
Sure. My name's TJ. I'm from Tacoma. I work with a print advertising company called RSVP Advertising. We mail affluent homeowners around the Puget Sound a few times a year. I've done this almost coming up on 3 years now. Born and raised in Tacoma, went to school up here at the University of Washington, graduated from Stadium High School, and just hugely passionate about small business. I love meeting interesting people like Jeff and just getting to talk about, the deep things of life. And I would describe myself as a lifelong learner. And so when something like artificial intelligence starts popping up on my news feed, when I hear about, these big companies, OpenAI, ChatGPT, Microsoft's Copilot, and other things, the type of person I am, I like to do some research and see what's possible. And I've been very pleasantly surprised in the last year or so how much easier it's made my work and even my personal life, just being curious about different things and wanting to kind of learn. And so, I'm married. Coming up on 3 years right now. My wife is pregnant. So we're expecting our first baby coming up in May, and I'm super excited. And maybe ChatGPT could teach me some things about that because I don't know what to expect.
Your daddy was a computer. Listen, okay, so congratulations on the baby and all that stuff. We talked about
Thank
that.
You.
Now, and you're also a person of faith. I want to make sure we put that in there as well.
Yep.
So how long have you been worshiping Allah?
Yeah.
I'm just kidding, folks. I'm just kidding. We're going to be talking about AI. So give me, you mentioned earlier that you thought it was kind of a waste of time.
Yeah.
Tell the audience a little bit about why you thought that.
Yeah. So I've seen the Terminator. So that was sort of where my first impressions about AI came from. And, I think it's all mostly crap. Like it's probably not going to go that direction. But I'm a kid. I see the movie and I'm like, oh, machines can be bad and can have a conscience and all this stuff. And I don't think that's necessarily true. I don't think machines are going to be able to have a conscience. But, um, as an adult, like in the work field 4 years ago, I was working for just a healthcare medical company. And I heard about OpenAI and ChatGPT, and I'm like, oh yeah, this could be cool. Like AI is going to help me do my job and make everything easier. And I used it just to do simple, I'd ask it a simple question like, hey, I want to recruit nurses in this area. What should I do? And it was terrible. I mean, I probably used it for a day or two and got zero extra work done. It actually took time out of my workday. So it
I
it
mean,
gave me a
why was it
sorry, go on.
terrible? I mean, what was bad about it?
It it's not as smart as it is now. Um,
Oh, I
so
see.
like when you go to Google, right, and you type in 2 plus 2, right, it's gonna pop out 4. It's gonna take a fraction of a second to give you that information because that's a mathematical equation. It knows it's true. AI relies a lot on existing databases. So just data that's in some company or some, in storage somewhere. It's relying on lots of data to learn and to kind of draw conclusions from and recognize patterns in. 4 years ago, in my opinion, it was not very good. Now, when I have the premium version of ChatGPT, I pay like $20 a month for it. It's really, really cheap. It's starting to give college and graduate level reasoning in a lot of different fields. And so for me personally, how I use it in my work is if I'm researching a company that I want to prospect, I will ask ChatGPT. I'll say, hey, I want all of the publicly available information on this company. I want the number of employees, how long they've been in business, how much do they spend on marketing. It's really important for me because I'm in marketing. And if they have a huge marketing budget, then, I'm going to be pretty excited to talk to these people. And within a fraction of a second, I mean, the same thing as Google, right? A few seconds. If it's out there on the internet somewhere, I get kind of a snapshot of this business. And if I were to go search the internet to do that myself, it might take me 2 or 3 hours of digging in different Google searches, trying to find documents, on the company and corporation documents, all this stuff. I don't have to do it as much anymore. It saves me hours out of each day when I'm getting ready to call a company and prospect on them. Information is power. And so right now, ChatGPT is pretty quick at giving me the information that I need. It's not always 100% accurate, but it's accurate enough where I can save, 5, 6, 7 hours a week that I normally would be spending researching. I now just ask ChatGPT, hey, tell me about this company. And it gives me the info. So I can go out and do more of the fun things like network and meet business owners.
So I tested out Copilot, and I guess I wasn't surprised to see all of the reference material that it
Mm-hmm.
posted up. I mean, because I asked it several questions and I got answers. So I
Yeah.
was talking to a human being who was the most
Mm-hmm.
intelligent person on the planet. But then when it gave me all the reference materials that it was basing its information on, it was
Uh-huh.
all stuff that I am vehemently against. But,
Mm-hmm.
or I should say, it used some very, very liberal
Mm-hmm.
organizations for me to research. However, what surprised me was the answers that it gave were true. And so I was like, well, it's giving me truthful answers, but telling me to go research people that aren't going to give me truthful answers. I thought that was kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know how it works. That's
Yeah.
the first time this week I did something like that and just started asking this computer. And it's kind of freaky to have this thing respond in a nanosecond with a paragraph this long of information. That's
Yeah.
kind of bizarre. But I
Yeah.
also looked at all the different things that it's, people are worried about their jobs being lost. But there's so
Mm-hmm.
much stuff that this thing can do now to cut costs and to literally cut out the human equation. Do you have any thoughts about that?
I do. I do, Jeff. I think what we are about to experience, maybe as soon as the next 5 years, I would say definitely within a decade, is going to be the same thing that we experienced when everybody in America farmed and then we opened factories, the Industrial Revolution.
Okay.
I think there will be kind of an information revolution. And I'm very pro AI. I was not pro AI a couple years ago, but to see how fast it's improved and it's only improving faster and faster, I think that people need to learn how to use it. I think people need to position themselves now, specifically small business owners. Right? I think AI is going to empower you to do a lot more than you can currently do. But I think the caveat is I don't think everybody's going to lose their job. I think some people will lose their jobs. I think specifically customer service will probably be the first industry to go. I used to work for Comcast, and I did sales and marketing for them. But when somebody calls in and they say, "Hey, my internet's not working," 95% of the time, the solution is to have them reset their router, which is unplugging it, letting it sit for a few minutes. You have to do it a specific way, and you actually have to like leave it unplugged for 2 minutes, not 90 seconds, not a minute and 59 seconds, 2 minutes, right? And I don't think we currently need a human being to take that phone call anymore. I think that just based off of the data that Comcast has acquired over the years, they could train an AI, agent, is kind of what they're called right now. You could replicate a human like voice to answer phone calls. And when people say, my internet's not working, I think you could save a lot of time and money by just directing them to, a bot that talks to you and says, hey, we're going to reset your internet, right? Like that's like the lowest hanging fruit to me. Super simple. There's no really thinking required. It's like, hey, here's 5 steps that you need to do right now. And if those 5 steps don't work, then we'll try the next thing. And that next thing might be talking to a human to try to intuit what the problem is. So I think that, I was talking to my wife earlier today, like Comcast, right? Just to use them as the example, because I have experience with them. Every single phone call that you make into Comcast is recorded and it's stored in a database for 20 years. And so they have 20 years of phone calls that they can now take, it's their data, and they can train an AI model on that data. And really, AI means a lot of different things, but machine learning, right, is kind of what I'm getting at. Machine learning is just helping teach a program to interpret results based on existing data. So if I showed you a picture of an apple, right, or I showed a computer a picture of an apple and I said to the computer, hey, this is an apple, it would say, oh, okay, this is what an apple looks like. Well, if you do that 100 million times or a
Right.
billion times, it's going to know what an apple looks like without me needing to be there anymore. And so then the human element can sort of disappear a little bit. And that's what machine learning is. And I think for a company like Comcast, right, like a large, Fortune 50 company with a lot of money and a lot of data already that they have stored, they're going to be able to really take advantage of training models to do jobs. But I don't think that they're going to be able to just fire, 50,000 customer service representatives. I think that would be extremely foolish because, let's say the chief information officer is in charge of the customer service department. I don't think it's possible yet to say we're going to fire this whole department and this AI model is going to report directly to me. Because now this person, what if there's a problem on a call? What if there's, 100 calls a day that are going wrong? This chief officer now, I don't think it's realistic to expect that they're going to be able to troubleshoot all of that by themselves. So I think customer service is going to evolve into more like piloting an AI model, kind of helping the computer get smarter and get better over time, and being there to troubleshoot any issues that come up, because issues are going to come up. I think we're still more towards the early stages of AI. I think we've got decades of innovation that have yet to be done. But I think, yeah, if that answers your question.
As I listen to you talk, I'm sitting there thinking of all of the things or applications, I should say, like you said yourself. 4 years ago, you thought it was crap. Now you're a proponent of it because its evolution has made you a believer. Now, 5 years from now, the evolution of giving it all this data globally is going to be even more. I mean, why would you need a chief operating officer if you have AI that can do that position? Because we're talking about communication. If you got a computer that could communicate relevant information in a nanosecond without missing a beat, why would you even need a person on the other end of the phone? I understand what you're saying there.
Yeah.
But also and when we talk industry, okay, one of the reasons Boeing is out on strike now is because they're looking at AI, the possibility of AI eliminating several jobs within the Boeing Corporation. And I hear that. I've also done some reading on this kind of stuff, to where if you have a computerized system or an artificial intelligence that could outperform the human being, even in an industrial situation with robotics and all the things they got going on now. In fact, I just read recently where Facebook, they've eliminated a great big chunk of their workforce because AI is doing their jobs now. So, 10,000 people from Facebook, if I remember the number right, they're gone now because they're not needed. AI is taking those jobs. Have you read any of that stuff?
Yeah, great question. I haven't read myself I haven't heard of people losing their job due to AI. I think it would be interesting to kind of look at maybe what's going on there, because it absolutely could be that AI is in a position now in those larger companies where it's like, hey, we don't need you anymore. But I will say that the tech industry specifically goes through cycles of overhiring and then big layoffs. And I know during COVID, they overhired like crazy. And now people are being told you got to return to the office, or you got to relocate. And so I know a lot of people are losing their jobs due to that. And I think the tech industry is just overly saturated right now. From my perspective, I think
I could buy into that.
Yeah.
Because you're right. It's kind of like when the bottom fell out on the tech industry and all those companies went, the dot-coms. Remember how well, I don't know, you're kind of young, but we had a whole bunch of dot-com companies that vanished overnight almost.
Oh, yeah.
But now for the simple application, for the 85-year-old lady who's a bit internet savvy, she starts learning AI, or even the teenager at school. Why do we need teachers if we've got AI?
Great question. I have a couple thoughts on that. So I do not personally believe that a machine like AI will ever have consciousness. So ChatGPT, for example, is one of the most popular AI tools that are out there. It's called an LLM, which is a large language model. And so what ChatGPT does, it seems like it's very intuitive, but really what it's doing when it's calculating and giving you references and whatnot is you ask it a question. and it's looking at maybe millions or billions of sentences and paragraphs that other people have said or uploaded to the internet or left in a comment somewhere, and it's just predicting what the best possible answer is. So it's a predictive model. It's not thinking, it doesn't have a brain. It's simply analyzing more data than a human being could possibly analyze in a short period of time. And then it's giving you essentially the most predictive thing. So when it comes to service, right? Like waiting tables or teachers, when there's human to human interaction, I think it's going to depend on what society really values. And I don't think that, I mean, at least for me personally, my personal belief, I value the human interaction quite a bit. You know, now granted, I use AI to teach me all sorts of things, right? Like I'm curious about something, I'll say, hey, teach this to me, you know, break it down over the course of a week. I want to spend an hour a day learning some topic, right? Whether it's like coding or, quantum physics, right? Like, so I do use AI to help me learn certain things, but I don't think it's ever going to get to a place where it has emotion or it can be intuitive like a human being can. I think it could get to the point where it can mimic, like it can
Mimic, right?
maybe give you some emotion, right? Like, oh, this kid is crying. Like, oh, okay. Like, hey, it's going to be okay, right? But it doesn't have the gut. I don't think it has the brain. You know what I mean? Like, it
No,
doesn't have the human spirit.
I'll kind of jump in there. Although while you're talking, I'm thinking of data, Star
Yeah.
Trek data. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm thinking Data's biggest commission, or probably frustration, if we can put it that way, was he didn't have the ability to express emotion. He didn't have mood swings. He didn't have temperament. He just had information. So even in that model, if we look at that particular program, and they've been researching AI for 50, 60 years now, even in that instance, he wasn't a sentient being. He wasn't conscious, nor could he really, um, the program, it was kind of funny because they always made sure that he didn't have the kind of emotions that humanity has, you know. So I agree with you. Based on what I've learned about the information, how the data is processed through the AI, it's really just a collection of data poured into a really, if you want to put it that way, an algorithm that has the ability to communicate instantaneously based on what's been poured into it. So it's still a machine. It is still a digital machine. But who's to say that it can't produce something that none of us thought of? Like, for example, the atom bomb. They figured out how to blow up the entire planet. How did they do that? Because they kept developing and processing and developing. So who's to say that AI can't one day create a person who has emotion or a thing that has, I don't know. I have no idea. They put this stuff inside of a baby inside of the womb, and then they spit out a data with human flesh. Who knows what they're capable of? There's so many things that are really challenging the original design of humanity with all this bubble chip technology and all these things that they're doing, all these nanotechnologies that they're pouring into people. I watched a commercial or a thing today where the guy didn't have to pay for his groceries, just waved his hand over a reader. And I'm going,
they have that at the Amazon stores. Some of them.
So I'm sitting here going, I think when I was way back as a Christian, I read about this kind of stuff in the Bible. So here we are. I mean, we're actually at a place where your digital footprint can be turned off. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, it's terrifying. I mean, that's one of the cons, I think, of AI, right? So there's like a positive outlook and a negative outlook. The negative outlook is Terminator, right? Same thing with the nuclear bomb, right? Like we didn't discover nuclear energy to drop bombs. Scientists discovered it to produce energy that was going to help humanity. Well, certain governments thought, let's drop bombs instead, right? So is nuclear a good or a bad thing overall? I guess it depends on who you ask. I think AI is going to be similar. So I think the positive aspects of it are, once we get to, there's this term called AGI, artificial general intelligence. And basically what it's a broad term. It's used in a lot of ways, but essentially my understanding of AGI is that artificial intelligence can get to a point where it can learn to program itself and learn to train itself. And so once it gets to that point, the rate at which improvement is made is going to it's going to go parabolic, right? It's going to just go straight up, because this machine will learn how to work on itself 24/7 with the same computing power as a billion human beings or whatever, right? 24/7, 365. It's just going to get really, 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 really smart. And what that means is, for us potentially, is really good things. Maybe we cure cancer, right? I don't know how certain companies would feel about that, but right, like maybe we cure cancer. We're doing things right now with gene therapy where we are taking genes out of human beings, looking at them. So for me, like, I'm predisposed to colon cancer. I don't have it, right? I've been tested for it, but I have a gene. I have something in my family that got passed to me where a lot of the men in my family get this thing. With AI, potentially, the computer could just be so smart that it can just figure out, oh, hey, TJ, you know what? We're just going to take a little bit of, we're going to poke you with something. We're going to take a little bit of DNA out of you, and we're just going to alter that gene. We're going to get rid of the one that says colon cancer, put it back into me. That's cool. Ethically, you get into like a weird area, because like the same thing you mentioned with the advent of like nuclear power, how smarter is humanity getting? And is that ultimately a good or a bad thing, the rate of technology, right? But I do think potentially, you're looking at a good outcome, like cure all disease, cure all cancer. People don't have to get sick. We'll have an even better understanding of health now, right? What nutrients our body needs. We can apply it to every single industry, like farming and medical. Maybe there's certain things we don't know about farming, certain nutrients, certain ways we can farm that increase the nutrients in our food, so we just don't get sick anymore. Like, that's really cool. The scary side, and this is also, being realistic here, this worries me a little bit, is, who controls it all? If it's so smart, does the government control it? Does the United Nations control it? Do private corporations, and then if power accumulates too much in some of those areas, can't they just take this amazing tool and hoard it all to themselves? Or, can a military AI pilot 1,000 drones with bombs attached to them and fly over and, just take out a bunch of people? Like, that's scary. That's also very realistic.
Scary to me is
that's going to happen.
What's scary to me is when they're dealing with the bioengineering, and they decide to make, using AI, they decide to make an airborne HIV virus, or they decide to make something lethal, and then it becomes part of the atmosphere. Because AI has developed something that can kill a population. See, and you and I both know as believers that mankind's propensity to be inventorous as well as catastrophic destruction. So the AI technology in that arena would outpace our ability to stop it. Because, those are the things. And we always think, most of humanity leans towards the negative things. You mentioned before you went live, you're more positive. You like to find the bright side of things. I'm the same way. That's why I do this podcast, is to bring people on that have something good and positive to say about helping people. But they've already created germ warfare. They've already created bioweapons. All of these things have all been done too. Now let's go ahead and give all of that information to AI and see what AI comes up with.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, and you're right. In my playbook, it's almost always the governments that the citizen has to fight.
Yep.
Well, it's kind of like taking all of our guns away from us. We've seen that happen in many countries, and then all of a sudden, millions of citizens have been killed. So it's always the populace fighting tyrannical government, and tyrannical government controls AI.
Yeah.
So I mean, it has its downside. It's a big one too.
That's why I'm such a proponent for everybody to get out there and use it now, because I think right now it's really not regulated that much. The European Union has some artificial intelligence act that they basically agreed, like they're not going to make like a social credit score. I'm sure you've heard stuff like that in China.
Yeah,
right?
I have heard all of it.
So there's some things in place right there, but I just think that the more people, specifically small business owners, who hop on the AI train now, I just think that it sort of is. The playing field is leveled again in a way that it hasn't been in a long time, because I don't think everybody thinks AI is going to be big, and I think it's going to be huge. And I feel like this is almost like the .com potentially, right?
Well, I think websites it's bigger than that. TJ,
Yeah,
I think I mean, I look at it from this way. We didn't like our neighbors, so we threw a rock at them. And a few decades later, we created gunpowder and we blew them up. Then we made bullets. Okay.
Yeah.
Likewise, King David didn't have the technology to build an assembly line. The assembly line revolutionized. It literally revolutionized. Travel. And then we ended up with airplanes. And so the good that can come out of this, I think, is going to surpass all of those things. In fact, between AI technology and quantum technology, I think humanity is moving into an arena, if we don't blow ourselves up first, that is miles beyond what Henry Ford did, what Edison did, even Tesla. I've been fascinated with Tesla over the last several months because the man was so far ahead of his time. I actually think he was murdered. Now I'm starting to think he was killed. But this digital technology has lightning speed, and none of those other things did. I mean, if you think about it, when the Industrial Revolution hit, the entirety of the agricultural world changed.
Yeah.
And so it took 5,000 years to get to the digital or the industrial age. Once the industrial age hit, it took less than 100 years to get to the digital age, the electronic age. So what I think the AI thing is going to be, like you said, 5 years from now, it's going to be so much more than what it is now. And your younger generation has probably got more of a footprint on all this than all of us that are going to be gone 20 years from now. If I look at it that way. So the world is changing, but the problem with those changes, like you said earlier, people are no longer communicating. People are no longer. In fact, I was listening to something earlier where the comedian, she was from Saturday Night Live. Can't think of her name, but she said people don't interact anymore. Kids don't play. Everybody's got their head down looking at a phone, or they're in social media. It's just there's no human contact. It's dying. And she said, we're in trouble, because if this keeps going, and then we have AI, which what she was talking about, she said, we're going to be so impersonal towards one another that AI is going to be able to control a lot of what we do and say. That was her concern. And I kind of see that. I mean, when you're walking down the street, I'm driving my car and I see a 15, 16, 17-year-old or a 25-year-old walking down the street, they're looking down at a phone across. I mean, it's almost, in fact, I challenge you, count how many times you see people looking at a phone in one day. You lose count, you know? So I don't know. I mean, you're positive and you're optimistic, but at the same time, well, let's kind of move this in a different direction.
Yeah.
Sure. You use AI.
Yes, I do.
Okay, so you got a baby coming. How many questions have you asked AI about your baby?
At least a dozen.
Okay, what kind of questions?
Well, so a little bit of like a kind of like a litmus test, I guess, to see. I asked questions more so to see what how it would frame the answers. So I asked it, what vaccines should I give to my baby? Right? You know,
None.
because there's a lot of
none.
There's a lot of them that you can give, and I wanted to see what answer it would give. And ChatGPT gives a very generic answer. Basically, hey, there's lots of schools of thought. Here are the ones that most people give, right? So to me, it gave like objective information, which I'm a fan of, right? But things like sleep training, how do people sleep train the baby? What do you do if it's crying on? You know what I mean? Like, what age do you start potty training, sleep training, all these like basic things that it's giving me sort of the kind of the spark notes version of what all the other human beings have ever said on the internet. And so I've used it for that in terms of just like what to expect. But I really wanted to see what if it was going to put a political spin on the vaccine question or some of the other questions I asked. Because you're right. I mean, OpenAI is a company. And
Right.
I'm pretty sure they just went private. There's a bunch of drama going on with their company. A lot of the founders have quit and left because they were an open source nonprofit type of company, or not open source. They were nonprofit. Elon Musk helped start them. Now they're for profit. Everybody's getting paid a bunch of money. It's a lot of drama, right? But I want to see, does this now for profit private company, what spin are they going to put on it? Because you can influence it. Same with Google. Same with Microsoft Copilot. You can skew the data, or you can influence the way that the data comes out, like you mentioned. I asked it a question, it gave me a bunch of liberal resources, but the answer it gave me was true. Well, what if the answer it gives you is not true? How do you know the difference? And that's something that I'm very wary of with, the government and then just different powers that be. I think it's very important that we just got to program it to be objectively truthful and not put a political spin on it. It has to be truthful.
That's not how we do things.
I know.
That's not how we do things, okay? We do things for profit in this country. And because the not conservative, I didn't mean that. The capitalist society there's so many tentacles of corruption now that we're almost $40 trillion in debt because of greed, which is what you just mentioned with these companies, nonprofit. Now they want pay. So the thing about our capitalist system, our free market enterprise, is it's really not based on, the dream. It's based on greed, which is causing a lot of corruption and everything. And our government is, it's kind of funny because, and I don't want to get off tangent, but these guys all want money to be elected. And then when they get elected, they all need money to play the game. And I'm going, this is terrible. This is not what So now you throw AI in the mix. And, you and I both know that we're kind of seeing a devolvement of humanity, the lack of civility, and just all kinds of things. Okay, and people are no longer it's like the network group we go to. I mean, we
Mm-hmm.
go to these groups and we do this thing, but you know what it actually is doing? It's breaking up the not monotony of not
Mm-hmm.
being engaged with other people in other lives. So I don't know where this AI is going to go. I think it's an let me say it differently. I think it's an amazing thing that we have tapped into. I really believe that. I just worry about the corruption that seems to permeate just about everything.
Mm-hmm.
I thought Facebook was a brilliant idea until it became self-sustaining and dictatorial.
Mm-hmm.
So you know what I mean? It
Yeah.
didn't need me anymore because it's got all the advertisers around the globe taking
Yep.
care of it. I'm basically a can of goods on a shelf in their
Mm-hmm.
database.
Yeah, you're
And
the product.
I'm the product. And so,
Uh-huh.
well, I thought Facebook originally started to connect people. Well, now you're the product that's making it billions of dollars.
Yeah.
So is that a good thing?
I don't know. I mean, I am a fan of capitalism mainly
Me too.
because I think you have to force competition, right? So right now, my my fingers on the pulse a little bit of this upcoming election, right? And everybody is just sick of it. Everybody's tired of it. Tired of all the news. Tired of all the just the he said, she said, right? I think that opens up competition for more independent news, right? People are tired of the current news cycle. It's all, if it bleeds, it leads, right? If it's dramatic, it makes money. And I think people are just kind of burnt out on that. And so there's the rise of independent news people who are maybe a little more objectively truthful or honest about their political opinions. Hey, I tend to lean to the left on most things, but hey, look, here's the footage, here's what I saw. Do with it what you will, right? It's more honest. I think with AI, the same thing I would expect to happen. It's so available to everybody right now. I mean, I spend $20 a month. You don't even need to spend money to use ChatGPT, but I spend the $20 a month to use their latest and greatest model, and it
So the
taught
free
me.
wait. The
Oh yeah,
free version doesn't
yeah.
give you the whole thing.
No, so
There's my point. There's my
yeah,
point. There's my
so
point.
so
You got to pay
right,
to
right,
play.
right. Yeah, but I mean, I think it's still accessible to so many people, and there's some, like Facebook. They have one called, I think it's Llama. It's open source. It's free. You don't need to pay them to use it. I think, so one project that I'm interested in, I've not been able to do it yet, but I think it would be cool if I could replicate my voice and do basic outbound sales phone calls. 30-second phone call, like a tier one touch, right? Is what I would call it. A simple, hey, I'm in print advertising. This is what I do. Here's how it could benefit you. Would you hop on a Zoom with me? I'd love to chat with you. I won't waste your time. Right? Something like that. If I could automate that for a small business, I mean, that's worth a ton of money, right? And that allows me to compete at a higher level, even with some of these larger companies, Like I'm not going to be competing with Comcast, but as a one-man army, if I could do 200 phone calls a day that are quality calls, I mean, that leverages, you know what I mean? Like there's so much extra leverage that I can apply there. And I am hopeful that people, like, I'm probably not going to go into the tech world. It's not really my gig. I'm interested in it, but it's just probably not what's in the cards for me. But other people could use AI right now to help teach themselves. Hey, how do I utilize these tools? And they can create competing tools to compete, with the Facebooks and with, the Open AI's ChatGPT and Google's Gemini, like all these different things that maybe are led by corporations that have skin in the game and whatever, maybe want to influence the election or influence people's thought, right? I think independent creatives, people, my generation, I'm a millennial, I'm 31 years old. I think there's a lot of um, people that are going to be able to compete at a larger scale. And so that's sort of my hope, is that, instead of going to this like doomsday scenario where everything's controlled by just a few companies and, all the fears that people have of like ultra late stage capitalism and whatever, I think that small people such as myself are going to be able to leverage their time and do more work as an individual. So, like you mentioned with Comcast earlier, what if you get to the point where you don't need a chief information officer? Well, cool. So now I could be a chief information. You know what I mean? Like I could do that level of work for me and myself and my small business. And so I think ultimately what I'm getting at is I think there's an opportunity, and I'm not like a redistribute wealth, like socialist type of person at all.
I
But
know,
I,
you know.
I think there's an opportunity for people towards the bottom end of the corporate totem pole to compete at a higher level, and force companies, these large organizations, even governments. I'm hopeful that you'll be able to force these people to compete with you, because like it goes back to the news. People are sick of hearing the same stuff. They're going to go to a different source. Who's going to provide that source, right? People are sick of how AI is, or the risks attached to AI. I think competition is just going to arise, and we're going to force everybody else to compete. That's my hope,
Well, when we talked about critical thought and how that
Yeah.
seems
Oh
to be
yeah.
diminished, I was watching a video of Beyonce. She spoke at a rally down in Texas for Kamala,
Yeah. Yeah.
and they booed her, and because she only spoke for 3 minutes, the audience was there to see her perform. They didn't care about Kamala at all.
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
she
Yeah.
did
Yeah.
when she didn't perform, that the crowd started walking out. They were booing and everything. Well, when I saw the news clip on one of the mainstream media, it showed that Kamala was having a successful time down in Texas with
Yeah.
Beyonce speaking, but it didn't show what happened afterwards. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, there are people, they see that news clip and they don't know the rest of the story. And those people, that's what their critical thought is based on, is that news clip.
Mm.
And they don't know the rest of the
Yeah.
story. And that's where people are being programmed to just rely on that information as opposed to critical thought and competing. Your
Yeah.
hope is that, maybe there's already, you and I we already represent that person that's not good enough for us. We're going to dig a little deeper, okay? I'm
Yeah.
hoping that there are more of us and more of those type people
Yeah.
to help make AI really beneficial than
Yeah.
the people that don't think about it at all, to just kind of follow the herd.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
Oh
I
yeah.
don't necessarily want to say liberal versus conservative.
Oh yeah.
People who don't do their own investigation typically follow somebody else's.
Yeah.
And I'm not one of those people.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, same. Eventually. I mean, I'm from Washington,
I'm
and
so
so
sorry.
whether whether I don't think it's controversial for me to say that it's a lot of like liberal thought kind of here, and growing up in the public school system, like a lot of those values kind of get passed on. And, a lot of my friends thought a certain way in high school. And now 10, 12 years past high school, they're like, I have a different opinion now because I've been in the world and things are expensive, or, you know,
When
like
reality hits.
when you live with your parents, you think a certain way and you act a certain way because they take care of you. And when you have to take care of yourself, sometimes things change. And I really feel the same way. I mean, I think humans, I don't think that I don't think people want to be lied to. I don't think that they would choose to believe the lie as opposed to the truth. Um, but I think that there's some deprogramming that maybe needs to happen for humans and humanity, specifically in this country, because we get so caught up in the news and the election and all this stuff. We get really caught up in it, and it seeps into your personal life. And ultimately, what we should care about is what's the actual truth. Not the political spin or the confirmation bias that you want to hear. I think we need to focus on what's the truth. And that's where I'm, again, back to AI. I think we need to, if we're going to regulate it, we need to make it such that it can't give you a spin,
Right.
that it needs to just be objective fact, and you decide with that information what you want to do.
Well, that's why I was impressed when because I've studied slavery, for example. I've studied the Arab slave trade. I've studied, the very first. Well, let me say it differently. When I started going back and learning the actual history of our nation, it wasn't about the white man hating the black man. It was about economics, and it was about a 15 centuries of oppression on people by other people. So what I'm trying to say here is when I started learning the truth, not what I was taught in high school, now I'm faced with the truth about stuff that nobody wants to hear, because the indoctrination of the lie is stronger than the truth. And so I agree with you. I think people want to know the truth, but whose truth? For me, it was, I started opening up books and going back and learning history as opposed to what somebody was told. And the history is like peeling an onion. When you peel the onion, you see layers and layers of facts. But most people don't, well, I won't say most people don't do that, but a lot of people don't do that. They just kind of go with the flow. And I'm hoping, in fact, while I'm sitting there thinking about this, I've got a few more questions now to ask of AI based on the years of study against the whole issue of race and ethnicity and all these different things. I wrote a book called Unculling Race. So what's interesting to me this week was when I asked specific questions about the history of Israel and the renaming of the land, it gave me truthful answers, things that I researched 45 years ago. But when you sit down and talk to a person about, well, let me say it differently. I have talked to a person, college students, and I asked them about the BDF movement and all these things. What I realize is they're clueless, absolutely clueless about actual history. And the thing I'm hoping AI does is exposes the truth as opposed to an emotional kind of thing that's been taught or programmed. I'm hoping that truth becomes just as instantaneous as some of the other questions I asked it about Israel and all that stuff. It was like I was so pleased. I was so happy that it said something truthful. I'm hoping AI can do that to kind of correct some of the stuff that's out there that people believe. Because a lot of stuff people believe is just, it's programmed information. It's not historical information. And that's man, if I could use AI to do that, I'm a happy camper. Well, I've really appreciated you coming on here talking about this. Was there anything specifically that you wanted to cover in the last, we got about 6 minutes left, about AI? Because I love your positivity. I love the fact that you kind of get it. But for the person who doesn't get it, or what would you like to say in the closing minutes of the program?
Yeah, I think just a real life example of how I used it to solve a problem in the last 2 or 3 weeks ago. So I'm a small business owner as well. I mentioned I worked for RSVP Advertising, and I do some of sales and marketing for them. My wife Stephanie started a bookkeeping company as well, and so we own a website, and she's got some small clients, and it's just very small operation. She's very, very smart, very good at what she does. But we started getting this complaint a couple months ago, people would say, hey, your emails bounce sometimes. Well, I can't have that. If we're emailing payroll information to people, it needs to get delivered. It needs to get delivered on time, and so I'm like, I don't know how to fix this. So I go to Google and I'm like, hey, how do I fix this problem? My emails are bouncing. And it gives me like 10 different solutions. It's like, hey, call your system administrator. I'm like, what does that even mean, system administrator? I learned pretty quickly, but I'm like, who is that? Is that me, or who? Is there a person involved in my business that I don't know about that manages my email account? I don't know. So I was like, Google's not helping me. I go into Chat GPT. I'm like, hey, my emails are bouncing. What's going on? And it gives me a few solutions. Contact your system administrator is one of them. And I just say, I don't know who the system administrator is. Can you please help me? Then it says, yeah, it's probably you. I'm like, whoa, like, okay. So as the system administrator, what do I need to do to solve this problem? And it just tells me, I'm like, hey, list it out in 5 steps for me, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I want this to take less than an hour. I want this problem solved. And it gives me 5 steps. It says, first, you need to go into your email and you need to copy and paste the error code. And it's that long, like 3-paragraph long code. I don't know what it means, but I'm sure copy and pasted it into Chat GPT. It analyzes the code and it says, this is very likely this, or this. And I'm like, okay, so 3 options. And I'm like, well, what is the number one option that you would choose? And it's this, I'm going to butcher. I don't even understand it myself, but it's this code in my wife's GoDaddy website. So we own a website through GoDaddy. You actually have to go in and add a line, like a script, right? And it's like, I'm talking like, it's not the same as coding, but to me, it might as well be. I don't understand any of this stuff. It's like P equals value 0 if, and I'm like, whoa, I don't know none of this stuff, right? So I tell it, I'm like, I don't know how to do that. Just do it for me. And it goes, all right, step by step. TJ, go to your account. Click on this thing right here. From here, scroll down to this. Click on that. Click add. Copy and paste this code into there. Do this. This is what you should expect moving forward. Your problem is solved. So I solved a problem that to me was very complex. I'm not a system administrator. I've not worked in a corporate setting in IT at all. But I know that that's probably a $70,000 or $80,000 a year job right now. And I just spent an hour on my Chat GPT and I performed that task. I think the person who performs that task in a corporate setting makes $80K a year right now. I looked it up. I've met those people. I'm friends with some of those people. But I messaged them. I'm like, hey, I did this. They were like, wow, oh my gosh, like it taught you how to do that. That's my job. So I'm like, ooh, so I can do an $80,000 a year task right now in an hour of my time. And I have no previous knowledge how to do it. I just simply asked the AI, I don't know how to solve this problem, but I need it solved today. Break it down in steps for me. Let's go step by step. And it was very user-friendly for me. I can read English. I think if you can read English, you could probably use AI. And so that's just like a parting encouragement that I have is if you're in a small business setting and you're having an issue, specifically a technical issue, I would just plug it into the AI and see what it says. Ask it to help you solve that problem because I think you're going to be able to solve it yourself and not have to pay somebody else to do it. Or you could be the person that gets paid to solve the problem and you can use ChatGPT to teach you things that you didn't know before, and you can use that as a tool to add value to companies. And so that's just an example of what I did even in the last 3 weeks. Things come up that I don't know, and I'm using it to help me figure out these things and explain it to me. Now I can explain it to my wife. Hey, this is what I did. And she's like, I don't know. It's all above my head. Thanks for solving my problem. Her emails don't bounce anymore, is the point.
Well, listen,
very cool.
That's a great way to end the program. And it gives me another way to think about using AI. In fact, if I can afford $20 a month, I might do the Chat GPT, but we're totally out of time. And I really appreciate you coming on. What I really appreciate the most about our chat over the last hour is the positivity that you've demonstrated about AI and encouragement to people to don't be afraid of it. Go explore it. I think that's really the heart of what you were suggesting. And then you give this great example as to how it helps and can help. So I'm really happy to have you on. I look forward to seeing you again. We have something else to talk about now. And remember, this whole show and all this programs are going to be available to you to put anywhere you want, to send out all over the place. But we are completely out of time. So TJ, I want to thank you very much for coming on. Let's talk about it. I think we've talked about quite a bit. And I really like what we've discussed. I'm more curious about doing this now than I was 2 months ago. So I appreciate you. Thank you so much. All right.
Thank you so much for having me, Jeff.
Yes, sir. We'll see you next week, maybe. Folks.
Yes, sir.
That's the end of Let's Talk About It for today. We are out of here. So have a good day.